Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Dennis Okore. I'd like to invite you to this morning session where we have an interesting topic ahead of us. I'm seeing most of the participants joining in and coming on board, I'll just like to maybe give a background on what we are in for today, and just to set the tone of the conversation that we have ahead of us. And thereafter, I will be telling you more about Invest in Africa. Then I'll invite the speaker, the panel conversation to progress. So the topic for this masterclass today is about maximizing agribusiness opportunity under the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. And the topic today is part of a series we've been conducting under the Invest in Africa Masterclass, which is brought to you in partnership with Mastercard Foundation, and is a bespoke program that we have been supporting SMEs to grow in the areas of accessing skills, accessing markets, and also access to finance, and more importantly, support them towards building their resilience during and post the pandemic period. This initiative is also running concurrently with the toolkit that was launched by Invest in Africa in 2020 May, where we develop bespoke tools to support the SMEs build resilience during this period. So today we'll be having a conversation with a very prolific panel, which is joining us for this forum. And the important thing that is in today's focus is the opportunities that are coming about because of the Continental Free Trade Area, which was launched 3 years ago. And interestingly, today's forum is coming at a time when we are celebrating the 3rd anniversary, because the idea of the Continental Free Trade Area for Africa was mooted in March 2018. And in January this year, this agreement was brought to life, and it's a very interesting time to have this conversation. So today we'll basically be focusing and looking at the agriculture and looking at how which opportunities are there in agribusiness and how SMEs can be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So I'll go ahead and give you an introduction of Invest in Africa, telling you who we are, what we do, and how we do it. So Invest in Africa is a private sector partnership organization which aims to deliver prosperity in the African economies, and that underpins our visions and what we do. We are geared towards creating job creation and driving economic growth through catalyzing SMEs and positioning them to growth in the private sector arena. We do this primarily by enabling trade between SMEs and large corporates, and reducing the gaps that are there by enhancing the SME skills, improving their access to market and access to finance. We aim to in the next 4 years, that's by 2025, to have created 250,000 jobs for SMEs. And this is in line in supporting the job creation agenda, which is being championed by the government of Kenya. And also, we hope to unlock opportunities for SMEs to the tune of 1 billion Kenyan shillings as part of the contracts that have been won by the SMEs through our private sector partnerships. So, so far we've been able to undertake trainings and capacity building programs for 1,000 SMEs. And to date, we run an online platform called biashara.now. We have registered 4,000 SMEs on the platform who are trading on the platform and unlocked financing to the tune of 154 million worth of contracts. This is mostly through our private sector partners. And we have supported 88,000 jobs that have come. In terms of financing, we've unlocked financing through our financial partners. These are mostly bank financial institutions and development finance institutions. We've unlocked financing to the tune of 5.8. Among this, 1.1 million has been accessed by women SMEs whom we are working with. So that's just a summary in some of the milestones that we have been able to achieve as Invest in Africa over the years. The program that we are running currently, as I told you, is under the SME toolkit, and we developed this basically to support SMEs towards building their resilience. And this was as a result of the pandemic. So we looked at how we can support SMEs, and we came up with a series of masterclasses. We have a coaching program that is currently running, peer-to-peer sessions, as well as bespoke access to finance program, which is supporting SMEs to be investor ready and to be bank ready, and also a knowledge academy where they can be able to continually access resources that they can use to grow their businesses. We've just included a contact there of one of our colleagues, Felista Sang, who is in charge of this program. So we'll share this also at the end of the session today. Perhaps you may want to engage with that program to understand it further if you are interested. So today, as I told you, our session primarily is looking at maximizing agribusiness opportunities under the AfCFTA, and we aim to achieve primarily three things through today's session. The first one is to create awareness to the participants on the opportunities that are available as a result of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Then the other thing we want to do today is to sensitize the participants' requirements and the benefits and food safety standard, as well as compliance that apply, especially when you look at agricultural products in the continent. Then the third thing is to create awareness in terms of the support mechanisms and opportunities for SMEs towards sustainable food production at the farm level towards a continental demand for trade. So within us today, we have very eminent panelists who are well versed in some of these areas, and they will be helping us to navigate some of these issues. And also we have SMEs who are involved in farming and also agribusiness, and also elements of value addition, mostly in agro processing. And this will be a very good conversations for them to hear. So without much ado, I will bring to you our panelists. I'll introduce them one by one, and thereafter I will be inviting them to make opening remarks. Then we will pick up the conversation from there. So I'll start off with Lucy Mishoki. Lucy Mishoki is currently the CEO of the Pan-African Agribusiness and Agro-Industry Consortium. She is a social scientist by training and holds a master's degree in strategy and business management. She is also currently the coordinator of the the Kenya Agribusiness and Agro Industry Alliance, the national chapter, and also is involved with the Kenya Chamber of Commerce as well as the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, commonly known as KEPSA, and has actively participated in the government initiatives and representing agro processing, and also as someone who has formed thought leadership at the regional level, mobilizing and supporting domestic private sector through intra-Africa trade. So today we have an expert amidst us who really has this matter of agribusiness at the Africa level being with us in this panel. So we're very happy to have Lucy Mishoki with us. Our next panelist who is joining us today is Dr. Esther Kimani. Dr. Esther Kimani is the Chief Executive Officer of the Pest Product Control Board, and formerly she's been the Managing Director of the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, commonly known as KEFIS. And she's also an entrepreneur, which makes us be in very good hands because amidst us today we have entrepreneurs. She has done a lot of work in agricultural value chain, and more importantly, she has dealt with issues to promote the access to quality seed, plant health, food safety, and quality agricultural produce. And more importantly, she has worked on coming up with benchmarks and standards to ensure that the seed trade within the COMESA and the East Africa region meet international plant protection standards, where she also sat in a committee, and she has also played other roles in opening up markets in China, US, among others. She is she has a wide range of knowledge and experience on the issue of quality assurance, agricultural inputs, and holds a PhD in crop protection and a master's degree in plant pathology and a BSc in agriculture from Nairobi. So, and also an MBA in strategic planning. Dr. Esther Kimani will be bringing us important perspectives in today's conversation, especially looking at the standards and compliance, because for us to do business at the continental level, we also need to align our processes to certain standards and requirements. So we have an expert who really understands this in a panel today. Our next panelist is Ricky Aguda, who is an agronomist, and Ricky has had a lot of experience working with in the agronomy area, and he currently serves at the Society of Crops Business Advisors, and also delivers strategy towards facilitative effective participation. He has held a number of work in terms of driving, developing the export supply chains, biological controls, and also done advisory in terms of implementation of sustainable farming systems, and this has also taken the outlook of African countries beyond Kenya, which has included Ethiopia, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other countries as well as Caribbean. We are very happy to have Ricky join us today. So welcome. Our fourth panelist is Roger Kirwa. Roger Kirwa is a known farmer. If you've been active, you must have come across him. He's currently the CEO and the founder of Agribusiness Africa, and he's also a social media consultant and advisor to the Michigan State University, as well as the Alliance for Africa Partnership Voice for Youth. His main expertise around value addition, and in this conversation today, we'll be bringing us the voice of SMEs and also the voice of the youths, especially in terms of looking at how inclusion is being driven into the value chain activity. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are our panelists who will be joining us today to really lead us in this conversation. So I'll just be taking this opportunity to welcome them. We'll be sharing their contacts at the later. Then once we are through with the panel conversation, I'll open up the floor for a Q&A with them. But if you have a question, do not hesitate to use the chat. You could shoot your question in the chat box, and then I'll be raising them with the panelists as we go ahead. So join me to welcome them. I just want to give them the floor, and maybe I'll give them a first instance to just say a word of hello, and then we'll proceed with the conversation from there. I'll first of all just pick up from where I created the context about our topic today, looking at the opportunities for agribusiness in the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, or the Free Trade Area, and looking at the opportunities that are there with this agreement. I just wanted to maybe perhaps bring Ricky on board, just to give us a context in terms of what opportunities are there from the agribusiness. As someone who has been engaging a lot in some of the African countries on this area, what are some of the opportunities that you think are coming out of this agreement that has just been operationalized in the last 3 months? Welcome, Ricky.
Thanks, Dennis. Just to get straight into it, I believe the biggest opportunity coming out of the Continental Free Trade Agreement is that after a long period of talk and negotiation, we actually have the framework in place that would allow us to start actively trading with each other. There's a psychological barrier that I believe has been broken. And basically, businesses are now entering into this particular space because previously, I'm sure you would agree with me, when the talks of African unity have previously come up, it's normally been a political conversation. It hasn't really had a business angle to it. When you've talked of free movement between countries, again, it tends to be in the political space, but not in the space of business. But what we are seeing and the shift that is happening now with the agreement having come into place is that businesses are now onboarding and starting to look at each other in terms of the countries that make up the free trade agreement and looking at the opportunities. Now, if you just consider that by default, the continent is a net importer of finished products, and we generally export raw material. One of the immediate opportunities is actually to look at value addition and look at import substitution. And when I talk of import substitution, I'm talking of Africa versus the rest of the world. There is opportunities for import substitution as a direct line of trade, so that instead of local industries sending out raw material, we can actually have finished product that is moving into the marketplace. So we already have good examples of that from a local agribusiness perspective. If you look at a company such as Bidco, who are domiciled here, their products are already trading within the African continent. But basically what we're saying is that the opportunity is there for more Bidcos to emerge through this particular free trade agreement. And it's not just a matter of pushing raw material into other African countries, but doing some value addition and then tapping into markets as a part of import substitution for the continent. So that would be my brief take, just in setting the context for our conversation today.
Thank you very much, Ricky. And one of the things Ricky has put out close up there is that what the aspect of value addition as an area that has not been explored and carries a lot of potential in terms of deflecting the balance from Africa being just a net importer and increasing the level of our exports. And that is very important because for us to get into agro processing, there is a certain quality and standard that we need to meet. So I'll invite Dr. Esther Kimani, who is someone who's this issue of quality assurance standards really goes through her bloodstream, just to give us a context in terms of the preparedness to support SMEs to achieve this. And are we able to produce to the required standards, or what can we do so that we are able to produce but also meet that standard that is required at the continental level and even globally? Welcome, Dr.
So thank you, Dennis. Maybe before I answer your question, whether we are prepared or not, the best thing is first maybe explain to the audience what SPS measures are, because sometimes there is usually a lot of confusion, or sometimes people feel that these things are just builders. Actually, SPS measures are covered under the WTO SPS agreement. And this agreement was formed to help nations to trade, but to be able to trade safely. And mostly it covers agriculture products, meaning the ones from animals and also from plants. And also the main aim of the agreement is to ensure protection of animals, human, and plants. So it's to protect the animals and plants so that they maintain their health, to protect them from diseases, pests, and also disease-carrying organisms that may affect them. So when we talk about SPS measures, we are trying to make sure that all those pests, the diseases, and those other organisms that may not cause diseases themselves, but they are carrying disease-causing organisms, are not being brought into a country while you are trading with agriculture products. They also aim at protecting human lives and also animal life from additives and contaminants, and or toxins or disease-causing organisms in foods or beverages or foodstuff. So you are saying that when you take those foodstuffs, You don't want them to have toxins. You don't want them to have disease-causing organisms in them. And so the SPS measures aim at protecting the animals that will eat that foodstuff, or the human beings that will eat that foodstuff, from being brought food that is contaminated with, that has those toxins or disease-causing organisms. So the first one is prevention of those organisms from spreading. The other one is protection from the contaminated food that may harm you. The other one is also to protect human health and plant and also the animals from plants or products from entry that are carrying those organisms from entering into a country where those organisms may establish and then spread. The WTO SBS agreement gives measures that can be taken to prevent those harms from being introduced into a territory, or for ensuring that the food that is being taken is safe. It also gives rules on how this should be done, so that also countries don't use it to protect their countries or as protectionism from preventing other people's products to come in the name that they are protecting human health, plant health, or animal health. And so the question was, are we prepared? How is or do we have preparedness? Are we prepared in terms of supporting the trade? I think it's good to realize that Kenya is a major agriculture country, and also we trade a lot. Our economy is based on agriculture. Like last year, I think the country earned 140 billion by exports of horticulture only. That includes the vegetables and flowers. And we are also exporting tea, coffee, and even grains. So I think Kenyans' issues of SPS are not new to Kenyans. But what we need to do is to expand awareness and knowledge on what needs to be done, so that more people can be able to access markets with the coming opportunities that we are having in the African Continental Free Trade Area. I think Kenyans, the government has put up structures that help in this compliance. We have the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. We also have the Department of Veterinary Service that will deal with the certification of the animal products. And then we also have the Pest Control Products Board that ensures that the right pesticides are being administered, or they are being registered. And together with Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, we also work on ensuring that the level of pesticides, or the maximum residue pesticide residues in products are maintained to the level that is acceptable under the guidelines that guide us. Maybe just to mention that the sanitary and phytosanitary standards are set by 3 bodies. We have the Codex that sets the standards for food safety. We have the International Plant Protection Convention that sets the standards for plant health. And also we have the OIE that deals with the standards for animal health. And I think these are what the people need to understand more and how to apply them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daktari. And you've actually went ahead and brought up the issue of the SPS, which I planned to ask you later. But you've mentioned something very important that really underpins the thinking, especially if we are to go into agro processing, and that is well articulated. Our other panelist, Lucy Mishoki, is with us, and perhaps I could just invite her now to greet us. But as part of her opening remarks, Lucy, I wanted to ask you, as someone who has been engaging at the Pan-African level, I wanted to ask you, with the AfCFTA now being launched in January, do you think it creates a favorable opportunity for SMEs, or there are still gaps that, or levels that SMEs need to scale to before they start thinking about trading at that level?
Thank you, Dennis, and I hope you can hear me out because I've been having a technical problem, but I hope now
We can
can
hear
hear
you
me.
well.
Thank you
you.
very
Welcome.
much. First, let me take this opportunity to thank Invest in Africa for organizing this important series, and of course, which is so timely. This discussion is very important to all of us, and not just SME, everybody, including the small holding farmers. So, yes, so the point I want to bring across, this is very important, having this single window where we can now, at long last, say that Africa can trade with each other is very critical, so important. And yes, I have been involved a lot in these discussions from the onset under the under African Union Commission, Department of Trade. These discussions were very important, and I'm sure this is one of the main transformation agenda that Africa, at long last, is going to reach its goals and attain what we've all been looking forward to, that it is our time in Africa. Knowing that we are only doing 16% intra-trade, which is the lowest in the world, knowing that other countries are doing 50% trade between themselves, and us doing 16 and exporting more than 80% of our raw materials, and especially the topic of agribusiness, exporting our raw materials in agriculture unfinished. Obviously, this is not the way, and it's never gonna, we cannot continue with that trend with the rising population of our youth and the joblessness in the continent. Obviously, we have to go think out of the box. And the thinking out of the box is, how are we going to add value to these raw materials here, create jobs, and create a win-win situation? We want to work with our partners who we have traded together. The ones we have been exporting to, those raw materials, we want to call them here in Africa. Let's set up those production and agro-processing zones. If we can't get it through companies like Kenya, for instance, and many other countries in Africa have already adopted the special economic zones, because we know the biggest problem we have in Africa is because of lack of infrastructure. How do the farmers access those services, the technologies? How do they access the land where they can be able to be supported to work with the others? So that we're not only talking about the quality, we are also talking of the quantity. So indeed, there's a lot to be thought around that. How do we create those special economic zones where we support quality and quantity? How are we going to ensure that there's a credit guarantee scheme? This is very critical right now, the fact that, yes, agriculture is always attributed to lack of confidence from the banking industry because of obviously the nature of agri, this perishable. But with the guarantee scheme, which we have seen last week, the Secretary General for AfCFTA here in Nairobi negotiating with the banks, and we know that what's going on, Exim Bank is working on that with the FCTA, and I'm seeing a lot happening behind the scene, and we remain very confident on what is going on, and we shall eventually be able to get there. Looking again at the issue of the conflict of interest, the many infights between African borders and within themselves, a lot of this is going to be resolved through this intra-Africa trade, where there's peace, where people share, then they see a common reason to live in harmony. So then as a component of not just food, sharing food is a component of peace. And then obviously, I like the idea of having the one standard, African standard. We've already done that. We have the European standards, and we can do African standards. The issue of certificate of origin is very important. We have traded in all these different ways with a lot of complications. Obviously, the fact that we have all these different people fighting among themselves because of the trade barriers, NTBs. So these NTBs have caused a lot of conflict. But when we are very clear on what our standards are, and at the same time, we know that we are restricted within those standards, then obviously we'll be able to trade with each other. But obviously, I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of our SMEs who are being onboarded right now. For instance, African Union working with other departments have already come up with a digital platform, which are very interesting, the AE Trade, where now it's well acknowledged and accepted that we can trade using that platform, where the issue of currencies is no longer an issue. You can use your currency, they're handling that, and onboarding is going on. Register with the AE Trade platform for you to do business digitally. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And you've really brought us into an interesting place by telling us, especially what we need to do, what the gaps are there, and some of the solutions that are already coming up there. You've mentioned the economic zone as a catalyst towards supporting SMEs, access some of the resources, leveraging technology, as well as access to credit and establishment of the credit guarantee schemes just to support that. And I was just wondering, in terms of the standards, Dr. Kimani, you mentioned the sanitary and the phytosanitary measures, and you gave us a context in terms of the origins from the WTO and the role they play in the food safety. And I was just looking at, from a quality assurance perspective, beyond safety, what are some of the other compliance tenets that SMEs who are in agro processing should think about in order to play in that continental stage or globally?
That you mean besides the SPS, or
yeah, besides the SPS,
further the SPS, yes,
and also other quality aspects that are beyond food safety that they need to think about.
Okay, now first of all, of course, they need to understand about the custom procedures. Because you find that, especially as mentioned about the rules of origin, you see all those kind of things, they have to understand the procedures and what is allowed in terms of the origin of the product. The other one is also, we have the TBT. Those are technical barriers to trade. Some of them are related to SPS, but if they are not being defined as protection for human life and health, or animal life and health, or plant life and health, then all the other standards are grouped as TBT. These will include issues like labeling, the kind of packaging that is required, and they go beyond the food. So, for example, let's say we are talking about electrical appliances or phones or any other equipment. Those are the kind of standards. The SMEs need to know what are the standards that are required. And as Lucy mentioned, we need to have even African. Our problems are unique, our needs are unique also. So it's important that besides having even the international standards, we can have also some African standards, but also noting that we are also in a global community. They should be harmonized as much as possible so that as Africans, if we decide to work together to access the global market, then we are able to, with the advantage of the economies of scales and the large what do I want to say? We are large as Africans. We have got a big masses of land that we can use also if we are dealing in agriculture or in any other business to work together and access and be global players like other people. I think that those are the major standards. But now the challenge we have in Africa actually is that the many countries, either we have not harmonized the standards, some of the countries are not even members of the WTO, so they have not developed systems for compliance with the international agreements. So we'll have some work to do to harmonize standards, recognize equivalence, and also get the people to comply with them to facilitate free trade. I hope I've been able to tease that. But
Yeah.
now just going maybe simplifying the issue even of SPS is what we need. We are saying that when you are processing the food, you need to keep an environment that prevents the food from being contaminated. That means you have to wash the services, use clean water, sanitize the services. Now I think because of COVID, we are quite familiar with the sanitizing, but just make sure that you are doing everything possible to ensure that you are not contaminating the product. Then for plant health, what we are saying is that if you are sending out, let's take even grains like maize, they are not having those wadudus like weevils, yeah, because maybe some people don't have those weevils in their country, and if you take them there, the weevils will start multiplying and destroying their products, not only maize but other grains. So what you're saying is that when you are trading, is that countries would wish you to meet certain standards that prevent introduction of those kind of pests in their country. And these are some of the things the SMEs need just to prepare themselves. If you understand them at a practical level, they are not exactly so difficult, but also you may have to do some work and some investments into prevention of those pests from being in the product. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daktari. Maybe before I let you go, there's one specific question that I wanted to ask about traceability. And is this an issue that is in Africa, or this only applies to the European markets, especially when you look at the agricultural products?
Let me simplify the word traceability. Sometimes people complicate it so much, but it applies from where you are saying issues of from farm to fork. And you find that, especially if you want to sort out problems and improve on problems, you need to have a kind of traceability system. For example, let's say I buy eggs eggs, yeah, from a supermarket, and I go home and I find these eggs are rotten. First, I should know which supermarket did I buy. And I should be able to prove maybe by the receipts that I carried that those eggs were from that supermarket. And then when I reach the supermarket and make my complaint, they should be able to know who sold them those eggs. And they should also have some kind of proof that the eggs came from there, so that when they give the person feedback, the person will examine maybe their systems. If they had bought from other people, they should be able to know where they got the product from. If they had made or produced the eggs themselves, maybe by they are keeping chicken, they should know, they should re-examine their systems and know why their eggs should be rotten. And from there, they can be able to improve the system. So in the same way, maybe I believe that also in the standards that we will develop for to make sustainable businesses in Africa also, some of those things may be, or it may be required that also we have those traceabilities, because the principle behind it is that whenever there's a problem, you should be able to trace back from up to the farm from where it came. First is also if you need to tell the person to take a break so that they don't continue contaminating the food, then you do it. But also, if there's a problem that needs to be solved, then you also know where the problem was coming from. And also because also what happens in business, sometimes people, especially if the business is really lucrative and it has a lot of money, you may find that people are collecting products from anywhere. Some of them are contaminated with what I said, the toxins and the diseases and what, and they are selling. And if they can't even be responsible or give account that they are the ones who did it, you find that people may poison others, but at the end of the day, you can't even know who did it. So I think it's a good thing, but also as Africans, we need to be prepared to invest into such systems to build more confidence to consumers, to do sustainable businesses, and also credible businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I thought that was just something that you could mention, and you've really explained it so well. I wanted to bring back Ricky, because when we began this conversation, Ricky gave us a glimpse in terms of opportunities, and he spoke very powerfully about the issue of looking at value addition as a key driver of opportunities, and where SMEs should look into in terms of scaling up their gains from this opportunity that is coming from the continental free trade area. And I wanted to ask you, Ricky, that a very specific question, because in this forum we have SMEs who are in different value chains. I wanted just to be very specific from where you sit and from your experience working in different countries in Africa. What do you think are some of the value chains that that portend more opportunities, especially at the continental area, in terms of value addition, and maybe looking at agro processing, maybe some that you could just highlight, especially from a Kenyan perspective, because here is a business who is attending this forum and they are saying, oh, maybe I'm doing avocado, or I'm doing cowpeas, or I'm doing maize. How will I sell this to Ghana? Is there an opportunity for this? What are some of the pointers you could say, especially when you start looking at the value chains?
Thanks, Dennis, for that question. Now, it's very interesting that I think the starting point is just looking at what Africa imports, and when you come to agribusiness, in terms of products, the range of imports is not as high as would be expected. What we import tends to be a bit more different. We're looking at things like motor vehicles, electricals. I think Esther alluded to that, but doesn't mean we are not importing agribusiness or agricultural related commodities. So just to address that, what is critical from a point of value addition is to actually look at it slightly differently, and I'll give an illustration with avocado. Of course, avocado as a commodity has several patterns that it can be used. You can have it consumed raw. You can have it processed. You can have the oil extracted, and that oil, which of course has different uses in the cosmetics or industrial space, is then also a product or a commodity that can be exported. But then you need to start looking in terms of value addition at, as an example, what avocado oil is used for. And that gives us the pointer, which then Lucy was pointing or alluding to, that we now need to look at developing the industries locally that would make those finished products. So it's not just a simple affair of saying, as we saw in the media the other day, I think we saw, or I would want to believe most of us did see an article or a mention somewhere that Ghana was going to stop exporting cocoa, and it was going to produce the chocolate and then export chocolate. In theory, that sounds very doable, but you then have to appreciate that when someone goes to a supermarket in Nairobi or elsewhere and they're buying chocolate, typically they go for a brand. And that is one of the issues that guides them in terms of what to select or what to buy. And that also then kind of tells us that when it comes to value addition, it's not just about working on your own. Yes, that is the ultimate and long-term objective, to have our own African brands that we then popularize and trade with. But you cannot run away from the fact that you also work with established brands and then seek to partner with them by way of value addition to process or add value to the products we are producing locally. So look at a sector like the fabric sector with cotton. Cotton has a variety of uses, but it then means agribusinesses or SMEs that are in that space need to look at partnerships with non-brands, and whether through the special economic zones or other mechanism, seek to have those brands, whether it is sweaters or other products that are made with cotton, have them actually manufactured locally, and that way you're then pushing out a product that is already globally recognized, and you're kind of short-circuiting the whole marketing and PR, where you really have to tell your own story for your product to be recognized. So in a roundabout way, it's a twofold. Just to summarize what I'm answering, it's a twofold process. One is really looking at international brands and seeking those partnerships where the investments in machinery or in franchising would allow us to actually then add value to these agribusiness products that we have, and then sell them on into African markets where we have a comparative advantage. But then the longer term of it is to tell and have our own story, so that products we add value to are accepted across the continent. And that, I think, is really where there's a lot of work to do, because we are in a global society. There are global brands, and you can tell just by virtue of marketing how strong globalization is. A good example, look at the Tesla brand of motor vehicle. We would say it's fairly recent, but it is a global brand, and it has some level of excitement that you find for some reason it will sell much more locally yet we have got entrepreneurs who have been trying to come up with their own versions of such motor vehicles, but just because of the whole issue of brand recognition, their efforts don't tend to go far. So agripreneurs need to look at it twofold: who can you partner with, and then start to possibilities locally. But over time, we do need to create our own African brands and be proud of them in terms of utilizing them and telling their stories, and that way we would have some sustainable increase in trade of finished products. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. That's quite insightful, and he has told us very interesting things. One thing I've liked about is um, bringing us back to reality in terms of not forgetting the global nature of our context. So, in as much as we are looking at Africa, in as much as we are looking at Kenya, we also need to look at what are some of other things that we need that will give us that push towards what we want to achieve. So I'll just like to invite Lucy Mishoki, and I wanted to ask her, someone who has been a big champion of women involvement, especially raising women entrepreneurs in agribusiness in Kenya and beyond. I wanted to ask you more specifically on the issue of inclusivity, because if you look at agricultural practices in Africa, they are more primarily undertaken by women, and mostly from especially from the primary agricultural point of view, where we're mostly focused on um, domestic use. Where is the place of in view of this AfCFTA, when we're now looking at a more commercialized agriculture? We're looking at things of scale, we're looking at things of technical capacity. Where is the place for women in this context, in this conversation?
Thank you very much, Dennis. And I must say that I like this conversation and the discussion around value addition, and obviously that Ricky contribution, and especially that discussion that was the trending video on Ghana declaration in Switzerland about. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We can be talking of value addition on cocoa, and as much as we'd love to, knowing that we are also limited in innovation and technology, and also the consumption and the power for purchase. So these are some of the things that we are really going to discuss. We want to be deliberate as a continent. Let us be realistic. Can we share? Can we eat? Can we feed ourselves? Can we afford? There are so many things, underlying issues that we are going to be faced with, and we are going to discuss as a continent. The truth is very critical and very important. That yes, the cocoa, we have a lot of cocoa, we are not selling the right price, but at the same time, we have the innovation to make the same cocoa, those nice chocolates that are brought back here. What really I found out the other day that you only have 50, you can find a whole factory only having 50 employees making all that cocoa, that all these chocolates that come here, the Linden, the one we love. So I don't know whether it's an issue of job creation. We need to really think out of the box. But coming back to this issue of women, before I just touch on the women, it's so important that we need to map Africa. There's one thing that we take for granted. We've really never understood our continent well. What exactly are we very good at? What can we produce and produce it well and be able to maximize on the profits? How do we ensure that we have high high value added products. So there's a lot of discussion that need to go around our productivity. There's a lot of discussion that need to go on the value addition. How much can we add? What is it we are getting out of it? Are we that next billionaire we've been talking about? That the first billionaire was in trade, evolution of sailors. The second billionaire was in the Rockefeller, which was in industrialization. The third was the billionaire on information, Bill Gates. But now we say it is a time for agribusiness billionaire. Time has come. It'll have to mean us being very innovative, thinking out of the box. If it is tomatoes, where are these tomatoes? Where are they growing? Can we map? What are the right ecological zones for growing the tomatoes? And if we grow them, can we go further? The medication for treating cancer come from tomato lycopene, which you just don't need a lot of it, and you become a billionaire making it. You must start thinking through innovation. So our women, I have been for the longest, our farmers, our production. They are the MSMEs, they're the traders. They're the ones who, majority, in the 74% of the distribution of foodstuff in Africa, which is done by MSMEs, majority are the women. And this has been proved. If you come back and look at the CBA Bank and the KCB, the M-Pesa, which is borrowed at 5 a.m., we found out 80% are the women who go and borrow in the morning, buy the food, distribute, and yes, they don't have the title deeds. And yet, they are doing so much work in the value chain. As I said, we are going to look at that issue of productivity so that when they buy and they resell, really, what are they making? What is value for them? What are they making out of this whole food system? And I chose to be deliberate. We are no longer calling it just food, but it's a food system. That every component of that food system matters. And where are women playing in that food system? You don't all have to go to production. Developed countries have fewer farm production because they have already adopted technologies. But there's more in the other side of value addition. And we're seeing a lot of mushrooming businesses from women. And I'm happy with the work that Invest in Africa is doing, supporting as many women to access finance so that they can be able to run their small businesses. Because these businesses are the ones we are going to cluster and make them the big companies, the Unilever of Africa. We have a dream as Africa, and we have seen women racing to the occasion. Women are ready to do what it takes. They have proved themselves. All they need is support, supporting capacity to produce, support in the capacity to do business, at the same time, understanding what is there. How are we having enough tomatoes? Are we having enough avocados? What can we do to add value? Let them not just venture into businesses because they have had there's a demand for avocado and everybody goes to avocado. What can they do more constructively, more in an innovation way, and make more income for their families? After all, as the saying goes, and I'm not biased about this, and I'm not biased because I'm a woman, but I know whenever you empower a woman, you empower the whole family. So it's indeed very important that we continue as you are doing, Invest in Africa, supporting the women and ensuring that the women continue holding on into their families and ensuring that we abide by the SDG rules, which is about supporting equality, yes, and also supporting our women to do business. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me that's an issue that she's very passionate about. And she's brought it out so well in terms of what women should do. We should change the narrative, put them into not just doing farming, but putting them at a level where they are able to maximize in terms of the gain, build their capacity, look at the variety in terms of what they bring on board from a supply point of view, and also look at the information from a demand point of view and where they're able to produce into. I just wanted to ask Ricky, because Ricky mentioned something very important in terms of us not forgetting our global context. And he said that even if we are to go on trading amongst the African context, we should not forget that we need to have machinery which we're getting from other countries who may not be in Africa. I wanted to maybe bring a twist to that and maybe look at other companies, because he also mentioned some other big companies in Africa like Bidco, and he actually encouraged us as SMEs that we need to think of how can we replicate many Bidcos in Africa. And I wanted to ask Ricky, maybe based on his sentiments earlier, and look at the issue of taking markets. And this is mostly where we have companies that are particularly buying directly from SMEs, and ask him, is this something that is on the table for with this the AfCFTA as an opportunity for SMEs in agri?
Dennis, I think maybe just be a bit more specific when you talk of taking companies.
This is particularly, I'm looking at mostly the produce, because ideally here, most of the SMEs in Kenya, for example, I've seen those who are doing farming, even in large scale, once they are finished, they have gone through all their processes, they have a problem with market. They're now saying that, oh, you know, are you looking for someone who can buy? So I'm just asking, are there companies that are particularly can offer opportunity, and maybe this of course is along the value chains, and even borrowing the example you had given earlier on the avocado, are there African companies that can do, like for example Bidco, who will maybe do offtake maybe soya beans and maybe sunflower? So I'm just looking at those. Is that something that is also a pathway to these opportunities that we want to maximize under this free trade area?
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And yes, it is. So I'll give you an example from horticulture for fresh fruits, vegetables. You would find that you'd have two sets of exporters, yeah, when it comes to horticultural produce. You have producers who have integrated their business all the way more or less end to end, and they will grow the commodity. So whether it's French beans or peas, they will grow it on their own farms. They will have their processing units, and they will then market to clients in in Europe or elsewhere. You have the second scenario where you have companies that are exporting companies, and they contract suppliers to supply them with products. So they give their suppliers their specifications. In some instances, they help their suppliers meet those specifications, and that's really where the role of the advisors or agronomists comes in. But they basically then just sell on the product to clients that they have sourced or linked to. Both scenarios work. There are different cases for that. but it gives you an indication that even for these other commodities, you do have the potential to have off-taking companies who then work with agribusinesses that I would say are primarily at either production or aggregation. Now, the key thing to appreciate is that as Dr. Kimani mentioned previously on matters of SPS, the language of trade is really standards. And standards speak to consistency in quality, primarily quality, but also the other parameters in terms of client specifications. So for off-taking companies that would want to work with agribusinesses or agribusinesses that want to play at the off-taking level, they still need to appreciate the standards in the other countries in terms of market requirements. They still need to appreciate the SPS requirements and then work backwards so that when you are looking, for example, at the avocado, and the production of avocado is notable, it's increasing in Kenya, you then work with your suppliers against those parameters. It's not very practical to just have the scenario where you grow something and then you say, you know what, I want a buyer for this. The buyer may be someone who prefers an organic product, and you have no mechanism to prove that what you produced was organic. You will lose out on that market opportunity. So at the end of the day, it kind of all these stages are interlinked. The agribusinesses must start to understand this language of standards, because yes, even locally we have the language of standards, but you will appreciate in a local market scenario that the language tends to be, is it big enough? Is it evenly ripe? Does it have any damage? And it's the same, but it goes beyond that, and it goes into quality checks when you go into some of these external markets, and especially those where we are looking at import substitution as an opportunity. So all in all, whether it is an off-taker or an agribusiness looking to go all the way, you must understand the relevant standards, and you must domesticate those standards into your supply chain so that there is consistency in how you deal with those who are supplying you, but there's also consistency in how you're engaging with the markets. And in that sense, then really I would say that the role of some of the organizations that have been mentioned here then now becomes more critical. Do the agribusinesses, as an example, and I'm not doing any marketing, but do they understand what the National Chamber of Commerce and industry is all about? Do they know what the processes are in terms of rules of origin? Where do they go when they would want, for example, assistance, and there's a client who seemingly is being difficult, and not on account of anything to do with the quality, but issues around payments and contracting. Where do they go for assistance? And sometimes where we go wrong is that agribusinesses just want to go direct. You feel that you can go directly to the market. You don't need to be part of an industry association or a trade association, yet that is actually the space within which issues such as the standards and the market requirements can then be effectively addressed. So Dennis, I know I've digressed a little from your initial question, but I hope I've shed some light on that query.
You've done justice to the question, Nikki, and thank you so much. I liked it because you've also alluded something Lucy had mentioned, but from the point of the women farmers working in groups. And I think it's a challenge for us as Agri SMEs also to recognize the power of networks and the power in numbers. So perhaps I could just welcome our panelists for a round of closing remarks. Lucy, then Daktari, then we'll finish up with Ricky. As they speak, we'll be putting, beaming just their contacts. Maybe you may want to drop them an email and follow up something they said during this conversation. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis, for such a very well eye-opening discussion. And I like the fact that we are on a very timely discussion when we are all rethinking about SME, which is the model for Africa businesses. And we're talking of more than 80% of our businesses being SMEs. And we are talking of moving away from the scenario that Africa has found itself in into the next continent in the globe to take up and shape up industrialization, and specifically more in agribusiness. So my thoughts are on what are really the hanging fruits for African SMEs. What can they be able to access and be able to turn around the transformation agenda and ensure that we are talking at par with our counterparts, our partners. And there's one thing I want to say here that you have mentioned it before. It's very important for women specifically to enter into this network, access this information through this network. And I want to say that I have looked at the Invest in Africa platform, the Biashara one, where women can enroll themselves. This is what women need. They need to have information that helps them to move and develop products and access markets. Market is everything. And also let them keep alert. Let them continue in this kind of dialogue, because there's a lot to learn. I'm thinking loudly what is there for the SMEs and the women in AfCFTA. To me, as I mentioned, I've already identified one platform, and of course, the Biashara platform in Kenya is also a very good one. That particular platform that I've seen, which is working very closely with the AfCFTA, Africa e-trade platform. We can all look at it. I'll share the details. And what they're trying to do is to remodel the Alibaba of Africa. And of course, can work with other platforms that are available. Africa need to start thinking it is their time. This is the time for us to access all data. We need data-backed information. The continent is open. We are seeing all this infrastructure taking place. We are seeing the Northern Corridor coming up. We're seeing the Beira, and Africa is opening. So to me, there's so much hope. There's much hope for our women, and I appreciate the fact that we have institutions like Invest in Africa to continue supporting the SMEs in this part of the world, and also linking them to other partners, Invest in Africa. And time to go. We are ready. It's time for us. It's time for our women. Thank you very much.
So much, Lucy, for that reflection in terms of encouraging women
Dennis?
to look at net. Thank you. About women participating in networks, keeping in line with the information about the markets, the trends, and more importantly, not losing hope and keeping the eye on the bigger picture. Thank you for that. I will welcome Dr. Esther Kimani just to make her final remarks.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I think the forum was really good, and I hope that the people who are here, though they didn't ask any questions, have really benefited. I hope the reason why they didn't ask is because the panelists were very clear and they understood everything. One thing I would want to encourage the SMEs is before you start your business, be very clear what you want to do and which market you are targeting. Then from there, you should know, you should try to understand what standards are being required, whether it's the market standards, whether it's the customer specification, or whether it's the SPS standards. And when it comes now to SPS standards and the other technical but TBT standards, we have institutions like Pest Control Products Board, we have KEBS, we have KEFIS, we have DVS. All these institutions are there to serve you. And so look at your product. If it's an animal product, then DVS will be very important to you. Go there, visit, and see what kind of rules are likely to affect your product, whether for the local market or for the export market. And then if you are also doing the plants, go to KEFIS. And if you are looking at the inputs to put in terms of pest management and what, come to PCPB and we'll tell you about the registered products. And all this will help you to be able to establish a sustainable business. And for when it comes to SPS issues, they are not negotiable. For example, let's say a market required a certain level of pesticide residue in the product, beyond which you should not pass. If you pass, you can't debate because it's for the protection of humans. Are you saying that they eat the food and they die or they get sick? So if people have said they don't want a certain pest to be found in the product that you're sending, you can't debate about it, because if you start debating, are you saying they introduce that pest that may they may destroy the agriculture or the environment? So you find that SPS issues are not negotiable, and you need to understand them before you even invest, because you can do an investment and not be able to market your product, and especially when you are doing cross-border trade. I think I'll stop there. Otherwise, there's a lot to be said. Before I stop, the other thing I want to encourage the African continent, even Kenya can set an example. We need to put as much information in the web, and so that people are able to access the information easily. For example, let's say you want to take your things to DRC Congo. Have they put their requirements in the website? Even for Kenya, if someone wants to bring something, are all those requirements that are required in the website? Though they vary from crop to crop and from country to country, then, but we can start somewhere, first by prioritizing the products we want to trade in, and then work on them and maximize as we move to the next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daktari. She has captured three main things. She has said that for us to have sustainable businesses, we must incorporate the aspect of SPS, and not only for that, but it's because we are dealing with human beings. And she has made a clarion call for us to think about information and put our information out there for the requirements, for the standards, not only for products. That's a very good clarion call. And lastly, we have our panelists for the day. Ricky Aguda, welcome.
Thanks, Dennis. I think mine will be twofold. First of all, I just picking up on what Dr. Kimani has mentioned in terms of putting information on the web. I think we need to appreciate overall that this where we are with we are still at the early stages. We have a ways to go, but we can learn from other similar continental trade initiatives. We can learn from the European Union, and information is indeed power. Information is power when the agribusinesses have access to it. Information is power when it is aggregated in the right way, so that you're not dealing from a point of misinformation. So it's going to be very important to have the right architecture for provision of information, and I believe these are where um, institutions like Invest in Africa then would need to come in, or even the regulatory authorities, the competent authorities. They have their individual mandates, but we need to see more of those portals where, for someone who is considering investing or starting to consider other market opportunities, they have a one-stop shop. But then that then leads very quickly into the next point, which is really emphasizing again that agribusinesses need to be congregated in associations where they can actually cross-pollinate and get to understand from each other, and even from those associations, what the standards require, and then work in a uniform way towards meeting those standards. The last one would be for me just to say, let's think from a win-win perspective. We are addressing agribusinesses, but we have seen, and I'll use a local example, we've seen the power of what you would call the bundled product, and that is really revolutionizing the retail market space in Kenya, whether you're in an urban setting or even a rural setting. I'll give you two examples. When you now drive into any typical fuel station, the scenario there has changed. It's become a point where you have a bundled product. You have the service for your vehicle in terms of fuel, the tire service, the engine service, and the typical shops that would sell you motor-related accessories. But we've now seen eateries and what you'd call the green grocers, but then also the pharmaceuticals, typically ending up being part of a bundled service at a fuel station. That tells you something, the value of congregation. The same issue in a different setting, and this one, just to demystify, because sometimes someone may say, what, that's just only working in the urban settings. But typically now, when you go into all towns out in the countryside and in any of the town centers, we have the development with what we used to call the exhibition stalls, and I'm sure all of you can testify to that. You will very often find within a town center a small complex where most probably with a modified trailer bodies, you will have a collection or a variety of shops. Again, you'll have an eatery, you'll have something doing clothing, you'll probably have a service point like a salon or a barber, and they're all in one place. And what this is showing us is that there is an awareness now that consumers like to get something of variety within one stop, what you call the one-stop shop. So even as we're looking at the African Continental Free Trade area and agreement, we need to think in that sense and not just look at it from a point of agribusinesses, but just look at the opportunities for bundled products. So as we're looking at exporting into other countries, don't just look at agribusiness. Look at what else is coming out of the overall business platform in Kenya as an example, and think of how you can bundle so that you then offer much wider variety of product or service into other markets in the region. And I believe that way we'll start to have the kind of innovation that will lead to the scenarios that Lucy was pointing at in terms of the next set of millionaires and billionaires just emerging within the continent. So I think those are my closing remarks, and I thank you for organizing the platform, and I do look forward to interacting further with participants via mail or other channels. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Ricky, for such an elaborate closing remarks. I've captured three main things also. He has re-emphasized the issue of information and creation awareness, and also he has brought in the aspect of the regulatory authorities being part of this conversation, and he has also pointed to a scenario of a win-win where he has given a very good example about, let us think in terms of the bundle products, because that is the thinking that the market, from a consumer perspective, it's the new way of thinking, and that will give us a competitive edge. So at this moment, I would like to give a very special appreciation to our prolific panelists who created time to be with us here today and honored our invitation to lead us in this conversation. I would like to say thank you to them on behalf of Invest in Africa. We are proud to be associated with you, and we look forward to engaging and even working with you in the near future. I would also like to thank you, all of you who have made it for today's forum, and appreciate you also for making time. And I'm sure you are leaving this forum with some learning that you can go to implement, and more importantly, position yourself in terms of maximizing the opportunities to do business in the free continental trade area. So thank you very much. I'll bring this forum to a close.